Welcome back to another deep dive. We are so glad you're joining us today because we have a really fascinating single source document to unpack with you.
We really do. And, it's not the kind of document you'd expect to be so engaging.
No, not at all. Usually, a school district vendor brief it's a cold, sterile document, right?
Hmm.
It's filled with insurance codes, compliance deadlines, procurement
Yeah,
logistics.
yeah, the kind of clinical jargon strictly built for administrators.
Exactly. You open the file and you expect to be put to sleep. But the document we are looking at today, which is from a Georgia-based organization called MentalSpace School, has this just jarring contradiction right in the middle of it.
Jarring is the perfect word for it.
Yeah, because right in the middle of all this institutional scaffolding, you are essentially reading a poem.
Right.
It's a deeply emotional Mother's Day tribute to the quiet, invisible struggles of parenting. And it honestly just stops you dead in your tracks.
It really is a striking contrast. I mean, as we dig into this deep dive today, try to picture the document almost split right down the middle in your mind.
Like a split screen.
Yeah, like a split screen.
Yeah.
On one half, you have this warm, chaotic family kitchen. The homework is spread out on the table, the lunch boxes are waiting on the counter.
The everyday home life.
Exactly. But then on the other half, it sharply transitions into this sterile, ultra-organized, heavily regulated school counselor's office.
That's quite the visual.
It is. And our goal today is to really figure out how these two completely different worlds are colliding. We are going to explore the immeasurable, unseen emotional labor of parenting, and then analyze the highly measurable, complex, systemic infrastructure that's now required to actually support student mental health.
And it really does start in that kitchen, like you said. The first half of this Mental Space School document is that Mother's Day tribute to the moms of Georgia students.
But it's not just generic praise, is it?
No, it doesn't rely on those empty greeting card platitudes at all. It credits parents with highly specific, granular action.
Yeah, the real day-to-day stuff.
Exactly. It talks about the mom who physically packs the lunch, the one who tracks down the permission forms, the mom who sits up at 2 a.m. to comfort the worry and just absorb the anxiety of her kid.
Which is such a vivid image.
It paints a picture of someone balancing work, life, and the sheer exhaustion of parenthood, but who just keeps showing up.
Right, and the phrasing they use there is very deliberate. They write, and I'm quoting here, "Your strength is the reason students thrive." And then they follow it up with, "Your love is the foundation that classrooms quietly rest on."
That's a heavy statement for a vendor brief.
It is, and that specific phrase, "quietly rest on," is just loaded with institutional self-awareness.
How so?
Well, it's an acknowledgement that this foundational support is completely silent to the outside world. It happens, before the school bell rings, and it happens long after the buses drop the kids back off.
Okay, let's unpack this, because reading that line makes me think of parental caregiving as the invisible operating system of a school district.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Think about your smartphone, right? There are millions of lines of code executing perfectly in the background every single second.
And you never see them.
Exactly. When it runs smoothly, you never explicitly notice the code running in the background. You just open your app and it works. But the second that operating system crashes,
Nothing works.
right, the hardware is totally useless. Everything just grinds to a halt. The school system operates the exact same way. If that invisible operating system at home crashes, the students simply cannot function in the classroom.
What's fascinating here is that we are seeing an institution openly admitting a truth that the educational system rarely says out loud.
Which is,
That educational success does not start at the classroom door.
right, it starts at the kitchen table.
Exactly. By publishing this tribute right alongside a clinical service brief, MentalSpace is essentially admitting that a school's ability to educate and nurture a child is entirely dependent on this uncompensated, unseen labor.
The school is structurally relying on the parents' emotional output.
Yeah, they're openly acknowledging that the silent foundation is what makes their jobs even possible.
But, wrapping a school in emotional poetry doesn't stop a panic attack in third period.
No, it definitely doesn't.
We have a societal reality right now where the statistics on youth anxiety and depression are just staggering.
Truly staggering.
So if we think of the school and the home as two load-bearing pillars holding up this child, What happens when the pressure of the modern world becomes too heavy for the home pillar to carry alone?
It starts to crack.
It starts to crack. And
Mhm.
at that point, the school pillar has to absorb the sheer weight of the crisis to prevent a total collapse.
Which is exactly why the document has to transition from empathy to emergency response. You can't just thank a foundation for holding up the building.
Mm.
You have to send in structural reinforcement.
So that's where the clinical side of this brief comes into play.
Yes, exactly. MentalSpace outlines a comprehensive K-12 mental health support system designed specifically for these Georgia schools, and it is a massive logistical undertaking.
I mean, the list of services is intense. We're looking at dedicated therapist teams assigned to specific schools, full-scale crisis intervention, suicide and violence prevention programs, and same-day teletherapy.
It's a lot to process.
It is. And we should really dig into that last one because same-day teletherapy sounds great on a glossy brochure, but the mechanics of actually pulling that off inside a public school seem impossibly complicated.
Oh, it is incredibly complicated. But to understand why it matters, you have to look at why traditional mental health models fail students in the first place.
Okay, lay it out for us.
In the standard system, the gap between a student asking for help and actually receiving it can be weeks or even months.
Right, because of the wait list.
Exactly. You have 6-month wait lists for pediatric therapists. And then when you finally get an appointment, parents have to take time off work, pull the child out of school, drive across town.
Time pulling a waiting room, drive back.
Yes. The friction is just enormous. So MentalSpace is engineering a system to collapse that timeline to zero.
So how does that physically work? If a kid hits a crisis point at, say, 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, they aren't just handing them an iPad in the hallway, right?
No, definitely not. They have to run what is essentially a pop-up medical clinic inside the educational facility.
Wow.
Yeah, they have to integrate with the school's bell schedule so the student doesn't miss core academic instruction.
Which is crucial.
It is. They also have to secure a confidential physical space within the building that meets strict medical privacy standards, and they have to have a rapid system for securing immediate, legally binding parental consent.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It requires a completely seamless handoff between the teacher, the school administration, and the remote clinical team.
Wait, if they're building this highly efficient clinical machine to handle a child's emotional crisis right there in the building, is this program trying to take over the mom's job?
I can see why you'd ask that.
I mean, if the document just spent all this time praising the mom for comforting the worry, but now the school has a rapid response medical team to do it, it almost feels like the institution is sidelining the family. Like, thanks for packing the lunch. We'll handle the heavy emotional lifting from here.
It might look like a systemic bypass of the parent at first glance, but the document actually builds in safeguards against that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you look at the core services, it explicitly mentions family counseling.
Okay, so the family's involved?
Exactly. This is not about extracting the child from the family unit to treat them in isolation. It's about integration. They are providing professional scaffolding around the family so the parent doesn't have to navigate the crisis alone.
Okay, that makes sense. So the parent is brought into the therapeutic process rather than being shut out of it once the kid walks through the school doors.
Precisely. And the document actually takes it a step further by listing staff wellness as a core pillar as well.
Staff wellness, like the teacher.
Yeah, this is a crucial piece of the puzzle. The system recognizes that the adults inside the building, the teachers, the administrators, the support staff, are also load-bearing tillers.
Oh, that's such a good point.
You cannot expect a burned-out, highly stressed teacher to pour emotional energy into an anxious student. The system acknowledges that the entire ecosystem, both the adults at home and the adults at school, requires clinical support for the student to actually thrive.
But having all these comprehensive services on a menu brings up a massive bottleneck.
The funding.
Exactly. Good intentions and robust therapy options mean absolutely nothing if families cannot access them or if the bureaucracy is just too tangled. Healthcare economics is usually where these grand educational experiments go to die.
Very true.
So how does MentalSpace actually execute this? How are they funding a pop-up medical clinic inside a public school?
That is where the institutional heavy lifting happens. The document outlines a very dense, highly strategic insurance matrix.
Right, it's like corporate alphabet soup in there.
It really is. They list an enormous array of private payers. They've got Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, Aetna, United Healthcare, Humana, Peach State, CareSource, Amerigroup.
As basically everyone.
Yeah, by casting this massive net, they are attempting to capture almost any private insurance a family might carry, ensuring the school district itself isn't footing the bill for the clinical hours.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The detail that caught my eye wasn't all the private payers. It's a very simple equation right in the middle of that section.
A Medicaid line.
Yeah, Medicaid equals $0. $0 out of pocket.
Which is huge.
It is. If we analyze that from a behavioral economic standpoint, it is the ultimate bottleneck remover. For a single parent on Medicaid, like the mom they honored in that opening tribute, a standard therapy copay could literally be the difference between getting her child treatment and paying the electric bill.
It's a terrible choice to have to make.
Exactly. By dropping that cost to zero, they completely eliminate the financial friction. She doesn't have to choose between groceries and her child's anxiety treatment.
It's the physical execution of the empathy they showed in the poem.
I love how you phrased that.
But, removing the financial friction is only half the battle. MentalSpace also has to navigate the sheer legal terror of operating healthcare services inside a public school.
Oh, the compliance side of things.
Yes. The document specifically highlights that their systems are fully HIPAA and FERPA compliant.
And we should really explain why that collision of acronyms is such a nightmare for school administrators. You are dealing with a child's educational records and their medical records under the exact same roof.
Exactly. So just to break it down, FERPA is the federal law that protects a student's educational records.
Like their report cards, attendance, disciplinary history.
Right. And then HIPAA is the federal law that protects their protected health information, like clinical therapy notes and psychiatric diagnoses.
Two completely different sets of rules.
Yes, and when a therapist operates inside a school, those two laws crash into each other. A principal might have the legal right to see a student's suspension record under FERPA, but they absolutely do not have the right to read the therapist's notes explaining the trauma that caused the behavioral outburst under FEPA.
So if a school counselor accidentally puts a clinical therapy note into a student's general academic file,
they've just breached federal law.
Wow. And I imagine the federal fines for that commingling can be catastrophic for a school district.
They can be district-ending, honestly. So what MentalSpace is doing is building a legal firewall. They are actively isolating the clinical data from the academic data so the school doesn't accidentally step on a legal landmine.
That makes a lot of sense.
But the document goes even further into the regulatory weeds. They explicitly offer HB 268 compliance support ahead of a looming July 2026 deadline.
Wait, so if they're offering compliance support for state legislation, does that mean MentalSpace is assuming the legal liability? Are they acting as a shield for the school?
That is exactly what they are doing.
That's a massive selling point.
It is, because state mandates regarding mental health or school safety are often unfunded and incredibly complex. They require massive amounts of paperwork, continuous legal review, and they generate a lot of institutional stress for principals and superintendents.
Or, educators, not healthcare compliance officers.
So exactly, MentalSpace is stepping in and saying, we will absorb the administrative terror of this legislation. They handle the legal labyrinth so the educators can actually focus on the students.
Okay, so if we step back and look at the board, we have the emotional foundation, right? The parents doing the unseen labor.
Right.
We have the systemic interventions, the crisis protocols, and the seamlessly integrated teletherapy.
Yep.
And we have the logistical execution, the massive insurance networks, the $0 Medicaid bottleneck removal, and the federal legal firewalls.
It's a deeply layered system.
They have built an incredibly complex machine.
Yeah.
But the real question is, what is the actual return on investment? Does the machine actually work?
To answer that, the document shifts from all these logistics to actual outcomes. They don't just ask the district to trust the process. They provide hard, quantifiable data points to prove the model's efficacy.
And what are those data points?
They highlight an 89% improved attendance rate, a 92% reduction in anxiety, and an 85% family satisfaction rate.
Wow. Those are staggering metrics in the context of K-12 education, where, moving the needle even a few percentage points is considered a massive victory.
Oh, absolutely.
So what does this all mean when we put the data next to the poetry? How does this clinical math actually speak to the emotion of that Mother's Day tribute?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, they are essentially two different languages describing the exact same reality.
Oh, I like that. Tell me more.
Well, think about that 92% reduction in anxiety. On a clinical spreadsheet, it's a metric of therapeutic success. But in the real world, that translates directly into tangibly less time that a mother has to spend comforting her worried child alone in the dark.
That's so true.
By driving down the clinical anxiety, the system is actively lightening the invisible load on the parent.
That makes perfect sense. The data is just measuring the relief.
Yeah.
And what about the attendance metric? The 89% improved attendance, that's not just a school funding metric, is it?
No, not at all. It's the statistical validation of the mom who, as the tribute said, made sure her child made it to that classroom one more day.
Right.
Getting an anxious or depressed child out of bed, dressed, and through the front doors of a school is a daily, exhausting battle for many parents. An 89% improvement means the intervention is working so well that the battle at the front door is largely being won.
The child actually has the coping mechanisms to manage being in the building.
Exactly.
And that final metric, the 85% family satisfaction rate, that completely puts my earlier worry to rest.
The worry about sidelined parents.
Yeah. If a school comes in and takes over the emotional care of a child, making the parent feel marginalized or judged, you do not get an 85% satisfaction score. Families would push back.
Oh, they definitely would.
That number proves that the integration we talked about, the family counseling, the partnership, is actually functioning harmoniously.
It really proves that the model works when you respect the source of the support. When an institution acknowledges the invisible labor of parenting and then deliberately builds a medically sound, financially accessible, legally compliant infrastructure to protect that labor, the entire ecosystem thrives.
The student gets better. The parent gets structural relief.
And the school fulfills its ultimate mandate.
It is a remarkable journey to take within a single document. I mean, we started today looking at the unquantifiable love of a mother packing a lunchbox in a warm kitchen.
Right.
And we followed that thread all the way through the mechanics of healthcare economics, the friction of insurance matrices, and the absolute necessity of IPA compliance firewalls. It really changes how you look at the modern educational system.
It forces a total perspective shift.
It's not just about textbooks, bell schedules, and standardized tests anymore. It is about survival, structural support, and deep institutional empathy. MentalSpace School is clearly trying to engineer a bridge across a gap that society has struggled with for far too long.
The document absolutely forces us to reevaluate our assumptions about what a school actually is. It states, quite beautifully, that a mother's love is the foundation that classrooms quietly rest on.
It does.
But when you look at the massive, highly specialized infrastructure now required to support a student, from same-day teletherapy, pop-up clinics, and crisis intervention teams to complex legal compliance shields, it raises an important question for you to consider.
How's that?
In the modern world, has the definition of a school fundamentally shifted from a place of academic instruction to a comprehensive first-line healthcare provider for the entire family?
Now, that is a thought that will stick with you.
Yep.
If the classroom rests on the family, but the family increasingly rests on the school's medical infrastructure, the entire dynamic of how society cares for its next generation is shifting right beneath our feet.
It really is.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration into the hidden systems that support our daily lives has sparked your curiosity. Keep exploring, keep questioning the mechanics of the world around you, and we will see you on the next deep dive.